Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to our holiday webcasts. We're going to be doing in the next few weeks the discourses relating to the month of Elul as preparation for Rosh Hashanah, and then when we finish this, we will do a discourse on Rosh Hashanah itself. This discourse is a discourse that was said by the Alter Rebbe Rabbi Zalman of Ledodi, and it is one of the most famous discourses that he ever delivered, and it is known as the Elul discourse, and it begins with the verse in Shir Hashirim, in the Song of Songs, Ani Ledodi v'Ledodi li. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is unto me. And these four words make up the acronym for the word Elul. If you take a look at the four first of the letters, the four words, the first letter of each word is Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed. It's right there in front of you. It's Elul. And so we'll begin with this discourse. Ani Ledodi v'Ledodi li Rashi Tevis Elul. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is unto me. That's the acronym for the Hebrew word Elul. Now this verse from the Song of Songs. Yes, you know, the whole Song of Songs describes, King Solomon is describing the love between the Jewish people and God. In the Song of Songs, King Solomon is describing the love between the Hashem and the Jewish people, in the metaphor of a husband and a wife. So in this verse itself, we already have an indication what the month of Elul represents. It's a certain closeness of Hashem with the Jewish people. There's a certain belovedness that is revealed from us to Him and from Him to us. He says, to be more specific, the four words, Ani Ledodi v'Ledodi li, I am to my beloved, and my beloved is unto me, is really Elul and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The first two words, Ani Ledodi, I am to my beloved, is in the month of Elul, and when we make a move to become closer to our beloved, I am to my beloved means I, the Jewish people, are to my beloved Hashem. When we do that in the month of Elul, then He responds, V'Ledodi li. He, not my beloved, then makes a move and becomes closer to me, to us. So that happens at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In other words, in the month of Elul, the job, so to say, is for us to make a move to step out of our own comfort zone and become a little closer to Hashem, and that elicits a response from Hashem, triggers a response from Hashem that He should then, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, be drawn closer to us. Ani Ledodi v'Ledodi li. Correct? Understood? In Elul begins the idea of I am to my beloved, which is an arousal from below. It's our job, it's time for us to be aroused to become closer to Hashem. Ad Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim sheheim b'chinas amshachas alakusa is barach lamata v'b'chinas is galus. That happens until Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that's a time where God is drawn to us in a revealed state. It becomes more revealed to us on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So it's because of when we become aroused to become closer to Hashem, that arouses Him to become closer to us. Cause and effect type of thing. As it states in another verse, the revelation of Hashem in the month of Tishrei and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur and Sukkot is described in the verse where this is a verse also in the Song of Songs, where King Solomon says, my left is under my head and my right hugs me, will hug me, tchapkeni. So what does this mean? What is the left and the right? So the left represents, this is the, in Kabbalistic terminology, right and left refers to the two attributes, heavenly attributes of Chesed and Gevura. Chesed meaning kindness, that's more represented by the right side, and Gevura, strict judgment, is represented by the left. Left represents, I guess, the idea of strictness, right represents the idea of kindness, of more attraction. So that's representative of the whole month of Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur would be considered the left, time of judgment, a time of, where we have to, Hashem is a little more exacting of us. And then on Sukkot is the time of V'minei Chavkeni, where the right hand hugs us. So to say, as we see, what is a Sukkot? A Sukkot, we know, has to have at least 2.5 walls, or 2 walls and a little bit. That's the minimum of a Sukkot. What does that represent? What's a hug? This is a hug. When you take someone around like this, you have 1 wall, 2 walls, and a little. It's Hashem hugging the Jewish people. That's what a sukkah is. Hashem is embracing the Jewish people. So that happens on Sukkot. But on Rosh Hashanah is a time of what we would call the left side, meaning it's a judgment. That's what we call it, the day of judgment. From Rosh Hashanah, Ad Yom Kippurim, U'Bchinas Meilei. From Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, the idea is represented by Hashem's left side, B'chinas Yira, and that's also associated with the emotion of fear. There's also love and fear, 2 emotions, right? Love would be more associated with the right side, kindness. When someone's kind to you, it makes you love him, and one is strict to you, it makes you fear him, and awe. So the same idea. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is what? A time of awe. King, you're talking about Hashem becoming the king. It brings dread upon people, not dread in a negative way. We're afraid. It means the awe. It represents the idea of becoming a little more humble and so on and so forth. Why? Because on Rosh Hashanah is the time where God's kingship is revealed, and that's why we keep calling him HaMelech. The whole emphasis of Rosh Hashanah is, in our liturgy, is kingdom, kingship. Which instead of saying Hakel HaKadosh, we say HaMelech HaKadosh. It's all about Hashem the King. We talk about his being Avinu Malkeinu. We talk about Hashem being our King most of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Because that's the time that Hashem's left side, so to say, his Gevura, the awe, that the aspect of Hashem which elicits awe and fear within the Jewish people, which is his kingdom. When you go into a king's palace, it's not a place where you feel this love and this openness and this you feel there's a certain awe that comes upon a person when you walk into a king's palace. Watch people. Even today, when they go into a place like the Buckingham Palace, especially if the Queen is there, there's a certain seriousness, a certain awe. I mean, it's not, you're not afraid of her. I mean, she doesn't have real power. Especially, imagine the times when kings did really have real power. It was a moment of seriousness and awe-inspiring. As we say, your kingdom is the king. God is the king of all the worlds. That means even in the concealed world, the upper spiritual realms, the angels and the higher creations, even they have this, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, they have this incredible dread and awe from the revelation of Hashem's kingdom, his kingship. Because that's really what happens on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a time where Hashem has to decide once again if he wants to animate and create the world once again for another year. It's the way it works. It's a year at a time. For Rosh Hashanah, Hashem decides, I like it, I want to go for another year. He gives life for another whole year. But till Rosh Hashanah, that means the life force of last year finishes when? At the end of the Erev Rosh Hashanah. So there's no more life for the next year. When does the life force of the next year begin? When the Jews blow the shofar, which is the next morning. That's when Hashem decides we're going for it. Because they want me. Because they blew the shofar. The shofar represents our acceptance of His kingdom. So that night it says the world's in limbo. It's like a time of real, it's not here, not there. We won't get into that right now, but the point is that on Rosh Hashanah is the time where God's kingdom is on the line. He's deciding whether to become the king of the world and therefore the creator of the world again or not. So when this is happening, even in the upper spheres, in the upper realms, the angels and all creations, if you read the Rosh Hashanah Machzor, you will see in this famous, in the Sana Teikef, before we say who shall live, who shall die, that prayer over there describes how the angels are all frightened, and it's a moment of serious, it's a serious moment. Because God's kingdom is revealed. And when the king is revealed, it brings upon fear. Or, and from that revelation, it's drawn down even in this physical world, and it causes that the Jewish people should receive upon themselves, accept upon themselves God's kingdom, the yoke of heaven. That revelation causes us to respond in kind, but from an aspect of fear, of awe. So that they should have fear of Hashem a whole year. Right? You can ask questions if you have any. Because let's face it, the fear of Hashem and loving Him is not something that is ingrained in every single person on his own. You wake in the morning, you feel this awe and the fear and love of Hashem. You love, your breakfast a little more, I think. Right? It's not exactly the nature of a person to have an automatic fear of Hashem. If not for the fact that Hashem reveals Himself to us and helps us develop that fear and love. So that's what happens specifically in this season. That the revelation of Hashem causes that we should respond and accept upon ourselves and have that feeling of awe and acceptance of Hashem's kingdom. It doesn't happen on its own. Hashem does it for us. He helps us. He reveals Himself to cause that fear. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, if someone explained to you that there's a new gadget, a new something that just came out with that's very good to buy, to have. It's going to just explain it to you in theoretical, just tell you about it. So you'll listen, you may get excited, you may not. But if it's right there in front of you, and you see the power of this thing, you see what it can do for you. It's right there. Or a food item, a munchie. If there's something in front of you, if someone tells you there's a beautiful restaurant that has such good food and you have to see the way they prepare the food, it's distant. When someone brings you there and they shows you a plate, now you begin to have an attraction. Same thing, Hashem you can tell a person about God, yeah? I should fear Him. It's true, I should, but it doesn't happen automatically. But when Hashem is revealed to you, He brings Himself close to you, reveals Himself to us, to our souls, that is. We don't see it with our eyes, but our neshamas feel it on these days. That causes, the response. When it's close to you and up front, up closer. So when is this time that Hashem reveals Himself? This is on Rosh Hashanah, the time of awe, as we said before, because it's a kingdom aspect that is being revealed, and that is Ledodi li, the second part of the verse. Ledodi li means my beloved is unto me, meaning Hashem is coming closer to us to cause us to have fear for Hashem. But what's Ani Ledodi? I am to my beloved is when? In the month of Elul. But what do we have in order to for Hashem to reveal Himself and make Himself up close to us on Rosh Hashanah? For that we have to do the step one through an arousal from below to wake ourselves up a little bit with a love and a fear of Hashem, and that is Ledodi, the Ein to my beloved. That happens in the month of Elul. So in the month of Elul, it is our job to step up and get out of our comfort zone a little bit, and that will cause that Hashem should then reveal Himself to really wake us up, which is our Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You get it? But now the Alter Rebbe is going to ask a question. So now we know what Ledodi, Ledodi Li is. Ledodi is Elul, and Ledodi Li is really Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But we have to first do that Ledodi in order for Hashem to do the Ledodi Li. But now comes the question. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
I skipped that parenthesis if you saw it, a small word. It is known, to be more specific, what is, if you're going to ask, what exactly, in Elul there's a greater revelation of God to us, right? What is this revelation? What exactly is He revealing?
It says mercy.
It says the 13 attributes of mercy are revealed to the Jewish people, to the world, in the month of Elul. A great revelation of the highest nature, similar to what was revealed on Mount Sinai when the Jewish people got forgiveness for their sins. Yeah? So then the question is, first of all we have to understand, if that's the case, why is Elul not a Yom Tov? Why is it a weekday? Why is it a weekday month? If there's such a great revelation, what makes a Yom Tov? What makes Sukkot a Yom Tov? Because there's a greater revelation of God in the world. If there's such a great revelation of God in the world in the month of Elul, you should have a whole month of Yom Tov. Make Kiddush every night and come to Shul every month. It should be Shabbos and Yom Tov. A whole month would be nice, no? Depends who you ask. I don't think the women will have So the question is, similar to Shabbos and Yom Tov, just like every Shabbos and Yom Tov. What makes it a Shabbos and a Yom Tov? The fact that there's a greater revelation of God in this world, right? He reveals much more of Himself in the world. That's why the world is holier. That's why you're not allowed to work when the God is in front of you to such a level. You can't, you have to be on a higher level. That's what makes it Shabbos, and that's what makes it Yom Tov. Ubefrat, especially basis man Yigimel Midas, Shema Ores Al Yenis Meid. Especially a revelation of this nature, of the 13 attributes of mercy, which are very lofty level of Hashem, and that's the level that's revealed on Yom Kippur. So, in other words, you're telling me that this month of Elul, which starts Tuesday, there's this revelation of God in the world, and the neshama should feel it, and we probably do feel it. Same revelation that's revealed on Yom Kippur. Yet, we're going to work, and it's, we go golfing, and we go shopping, and what is that? Why is it not a Yom Tov? There must obviously be a difference between the revelation as it's in Elul and the revelation as it's on Yom Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And that's a Yom Tov and this is not. What is the difference? There must be a difference. We're saying that on both of these, this whole 40 days, God has revealed on the highest level of revelation, the 13 attributes of mercy. Yet, these are Yom Tovs and these are not. There's a difference. So he begins to explain the difference. This will be understood through a parable of a king. Remember, you ever heard of the famous parable, the king in the field? Mm-hmm. This is where it comes from. This will be understood through a parable of a king, that before he comes to the city, the people of the city go out to greet him, so that they greet him in the field. What he's saying over here is, where's the place of a king usually? in his palace. But sometimes, on occasion, he will leave his palace and go on a trip to do something that he likes, whatever. So what happens? Before he comes back to his palace, now he's on the way back home. So where does he go? In order to go through the palace, he has to go through the city. In order to go through the city, he has to go through the outskirts of the city first, right? That's how it is. So the people of the city go out into the field to greet him, because when he's in the palace, no one can. When do you see a king? No one can see him. But when he's on the way back from a trip, and he's coming that day, so everyone goes out to the city, to the field, to greet him. Then there's no limit. Anyone that wants can go out and see him and greet him. More. He says even more, but that's not only that we can greet him. He accepts and receives everyone with a cheerful countenance. And he shows everyone a smiling face. He smiles to everyone, shaking hands. He's really close to the people there. Accessible. But when he goes back to his city, into the city, what happens? Everyone is following him. When he goes into the city, that's it. Now you stay away. Now the king goes himself. They go after him as much as they can. When he comes to the palace, then no one can go in unless you have a ticket, a permission. And who gets then a ticket to go in? You have to have permission. Who gets permission? Only special people. In the same way, that's how the Alter Rebbe describes the difference between the month of Elul and the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In the month of Elul, we go out to the field to receive Hashem in the field. What is the meaning of this? What was the question? The question was, why is the month of Elul not a Yom Tov? If there's such a revelation of the 13 attributes, which causes us to be stirred, to serve Hashem better and to have a greater level of fear, so why is it a regular day? The answer he gives is that the difference between the way Hashem is revealed in Elul and the way He's revealed on the high holidays is the difference between a king as he's revealed when he's out in the field and a king the way he's revealed in his palace. What is the difference? When a king goes out into the field, so there's 2 points. Number one, we'll talk first about us, and then we'll talk about the king. There's a difference in us, and there's a difference in the king.
Sure, perspective.
What is your? How do you dress when you're in the field?
Pashut.
The way you are. Not there's no. Just the way you are.
Natural.
The king comes out to the field. Do you get dressed up to greet him? So you're getting into your best and finest. The point is not. You're not in your bed, you're just the way you are. That's the king comes to you on your terms. He comes into your turf. And but when you go to the king, when you have to go for an appointment in the palace, you're going to put on the best, you dress up, you clean yourself, you make yourself, you do the right thing to honor the place you're going to be in. That's the way it is by us. So Elul is a time where we're not, we're just regular. We just came out of a long 11-month year, right? The way, not really spiritually elevated. We're with our, our overall, so to say. We're not so clean. Spiritually, this is all. Yet Hashem comes. He's there. He comes to you the way you are. And Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur already, every Jew feels a little, much more inspired. So the Jew is already a little bit nicer too. On Rosh Hashanah, no Jew is the same on Rosh Hashanah the way he's before. If they're serious, if they're honest, then they have a connection to any of this. Hashanah, a person is a little more spiritual, feels elevated, holier. And now from the king's perspective, when Hashem comes down to the king, how's Hashem, how's outside the king? We'll go to the parable first. What does the king look like when he's in his palace? He's wearing a crown, and he's wearing his royal garments, and he's with all the guards and the whole thing. You ever went to that palace? It's unbelievable. When the king is out of his inner chambers, out of his palace, he goes into the field, he may not even take his crown with him. The crown he leaves in the back home. He's not going to go on a hunting trip with his crown, right? He doesn't leave the palace necessarily with all his royal, the full, what do you call it?
Wardrobe.
Yeah. He may himself also come a little more relaxed and casual. And that's the difference between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And between Elul and the High Holy Days. In the month of Elul, Hashem it's a revelation of the king, but not with the whole aura. It doesn't have the whole aura of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and that's why it's not a Yom Tov. Because the revelation is not as magnificent as it is. It's the same level, if you will. The 13 attributes, but it's not. Level? Yeah, the 13 attributes. He's saying it's the 13 attributes of mercy, serious stuff. But it's with the way Hashem is without the whole, doesn't cause this incredible awe. When you go into a king's palace, you could be a heart of stone and you melt. You just have to. The surroundings are just cause this awe-inspiring feeling. But when the king is coming to your house, you come with a regular suit, and he doesn't look like a king. He's a king. But when he comes without that whole aura around him, it's more relaxed. It doesn't make you feel so, So it's the same 13 attributes of mercy, but no, it's not a Yom Tov because it lacks that whole inner aura, that surrounding of the whole royalty and the whole thing. So it's from us there's a difference, but because by the king there's also a difference.
He also catches us off guard.
No, we know that he's coming. We're going to greet him.
If you're aware and have that connection.
Obviously, if you're not connected, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on. It says, and that's how the Alter Rebbe answers that question. The parable of the king in the field. What does that tell us? Number one, it tells us that there's a tremendous closeness between Hashem and us. And it's a closeness that we don't even have to make the greatest preparation for this closeness. You are the way you are. As he comes out to our turf, obviously you have to make some, as you see later in the discourse, you can't be. We'll see soon. You have to go. At least you have to go out into the field to greet him. But the Rebbe is going to say later in the discourse that in the parable, there's three types of realities. There's the city, there's the field, and then there's a desert. The desert is a place where God cannot be. The desert represents where there's no God visible. It's a negative, meaning in a sinful reality. The city represents the palace reality, where the palace is. That's total holiness. It's Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. To be in the desert, God's not coming out to the desert. God doesn't go to a place with this total negativity. In the month of El, what we have to do is you don't have to go into the palace, but you have to leave the desert and at least go into the field. He's there for you. He's waiting in the field. You don't have to become the holiest person at Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. Be with your overalls, but get out of the desert. I can't come to you there. I can't come to the desert and meet you there.
Come to the middle.
At least leave the desert and go into the field. That's the idea. The king is in the field. The famous parable. There is a verse where it states, Yoir Hashem panav elech, Hashem should shine his countenance upon you. What does this mean? And we say it in the priestly blessing, there's Hakohen. Yoir Hashem panav elecha, v'chuneka, right? Hashem will shine his countenance to you, upon you. This is a reference to the 13 attributes of mercy. Shehu inyan ha'oros yud gimel midas, That is the revelation of the 13 attributes. It should be face to face. What does face to face mean? When you're facing a good friend, so that life comes through his eyes or her eyes, and you're face to face, a revelation. You're revealed one to the other. When you're back to back, or even face to back, there's no real revelation there.
Rabbi, let me ask you a question. When Moses left Egypt and had to cross the desert, wasn't that sort of a cleansing time?
When Moses left,
he was thrown out of Egypt and he crossed the desert to get to Mount Sinai. And it was a very horrible time.
I have a feeling you saw too much of Charleston Heston.
So where did he go when he left Egypt? He had to cross the Sinai.
Yeah, but
He had to cross
talking about a spiritual desert before, not a real desert.
No, but you're right. Moshe did have.
He had to cross the Sinai.
No question that he had this in his 80 years till Egypt. He went through a lot.
So there had to be some sort of cleansing for him.
Why? Okay, and I'm sure there was some kind of.
Well, wasn't Hashem present during that time when he was traveling across the desert?
Moshe was born at Tzaddik, it says.
So that's different.
It says when he was born already, the light shined. There was a light that came out of his crib.
Right then.
They saw it right away that he was something else.
Superman.
That's the revelation of the 13 attributes that should be face to face. Yor Hashem ponov, his face should shine to you. It's not enough that he shines, but then he just turns his back to you. We want his face to shine to us. It should be a closeness. Which means, when we say that there's a revelation of the 13 attributes face to face, that there should be a revelation of his inner desire and will to the Jewish people. Ayidei sheyeh iker pnimis retzeinei elav yizbarach l'davka be'belev v'nefesh mumked lid mesiras nefesh meshkas u'magamach. How do we accomplish that Hashem should reveal to us a face-to-face closeness and relationship where his inner desire should be within us? He should really want us. That's if we really want him. If the main will and desire of a Jew is to connect and cleave to Hashem with heart and soul, from the depth of his heart to the point of self-sacrifice even if needed, that causes Hashem to really want us. And the revelation of this, the 13 attributes of mercy, starts from from Hashem's name Kel. What are the 13 attributes? Do you know what they are? Hashem, Kel, Rachum, V'chanun, Erech, Apayim, V'rav Chesed, right? We say the 13. Which is the first? Kel. Kel Rachum, it's the word El, his name. That's the beginning of the 13 attributes. So that's that name of Hashem that represents this great revelation. As the pasuk says, referring to God, Kel Hashem, that name Kel Hashem, and it shines to us. So it's the 13 attributes of mercy. The bottom line is that's the revelation that we are in touch with in the month of Elul. It's the infinite Hashem himself. The light of the infinite Hashem himself. As it says in another verse, in the pasuk we just read it 2 weeks ago in the Torah portion, Hashem, your God, is a consuming fire. Remember that verse? What does this mean, Peter? Just like the light of a fire, the rays of a fire that come from the fire itself, right? There's basically no difference between the fire itself and the ray that comes from the fire. It's all the same. In the same way, when Hashem shines his face to us in the month of Elul and Rosh Hashanah, to the Jewish people, which we said begins with that's represented by the name El, the first of the 13 attributes, This is the infinite light of Hashem Himself that is shining to us. It's a ray, but it represents the infinite. That's why we are called Israel. What does the word Yisrael mean? It's made up of two words. Sar El. Yisrael, right? Sar El. But there's more. It's not only Sar El, but there's also a Yud. Yud Sar El. Right? Yisrael. So what does Sar El mean? That the word, the name Hashem, what does the word Sar mean? A master. The name Hashem, that revelation is a master within us. That is the most important part of us. In other words, we are under that influence. And the Yud represents Yisrael, meaning that, like you said, the Yud in the Hebrew, if you know some Hebrew grammar, the Yud represents that it's a continuum. It's always that way. So always is the name Hashem, that the revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy, which begin with the name Keil, Keil Erech HaPayim, is always masters within us. That's why we're called Yisrael. That means that every soul is a spark of Hashem Himself, that livens up His godly soul, and draws him he's naturally drawn to be connected and included in the God's light, in the light of life. To be ready to even give up your life for Hashem. And this spark transcends even the chokhmah and the intellect of the person. It's higher than that. It's not a rational thing. You're ready to devote yourself to Hashem sometimes, even in a super rational way. That part of our soul transcends the 10 attributes of the soul. It's the essence. Because if you think from the rational point of the soul, thinking of it rationally, a person probably would not be ready to give up his life for Hashem, right? Why should I? You can even think of it in a holy way, right? If someone comes to you and tests you with the ultimate test of faith, if you don't bow to an idol, I'm going to kill you. The person would say, rationally, it doesn't make sense to let yourself die. Well, let me bow. It's an external thing. I don't believe in it anyway, and I'll live, and I'll be able to serve God for another 50 years. Does that make sense? No. It's more sense than letting yourself die. But a Yid doesn't do that. He goes beyond. He acts in a super rational way. I can't do this. End of story. I don't have to live. He gives up his life, as many Jews have. But it's not a rational decision. It's a super rational decision. It comes from that spark that is connected with the name Hakel, which we just explained, Yisroel. So and that's the meaning when we read yesterday in the Parsha. You are children of Hashem. That's what the Parsha yesterday said. Because a son is like his father, he's connected to his father, or a daughter to a mother, same idea. A son is connected to his father in a super rational way. To explain it doesn't have to have rationale. He's devoted to his father, period. To maybe like a foot is devoted and nullified to the head. It does what the head wants, right? What the brain wants. It doesn't have a will of its own. The foot doesn't have a will of its own. It's there to serve the body, to serve the brain. The same thing, a son to a father, and a yid to Hashem. And this is the meaning of the Mishnah. It says, nullify your will for Hashem's will. Because in order that there should be a revelation of this, what we just described in Elul, the inner divine will to the Jewish people, the 13 attributes of what you just described, for that you have to nullify all your desires. You shouldn't have a separate will other than Hashem. Then you'll feel it. Then you'll feel this incredible oneness and closeness that is happening in these 40 days. But even if you don't feel it, you're not at that level, The revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy are taking place, albeit in a way that is more field-like, as we just described. That's why it's not a Yom Tov. It's a powerful revelation. Next week we'll learn goes a little further into this parable of the field, at this desert, field, and city, which we'll describe in a little bit. But today, we'll just learn the first paragraph, which is the idea what happens in Elul to begin. What is this Elul? Moshe went up the mountain for 40 days, and there was a time of Eis Ratzon, of goodwill. That's what this is. And it happens every year, over and over.